Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today we have Miss Neena Rai. Thank you, Neena ji, for joining the podcast with me. So Neena Rai ji is a writer. She has written this fantastic book, Amazing Ayodhya, which has fascinating details. It's also called Adbhut Ayodhya in Hindi. It has fascinating details about the geography, the history, the military might, the weapons, the pets, and so many fascinating aspects about Ayodhya that we generally don't come across when we talk about the history or the legend of Ramayana and the story of Sri Ram. So this book delves into the physical aspects that we can actually, the tangible aspects of Ayodhya that we can understand. So Neena ji she's an alumnus of the Indian Institute of Mass Communication. She lives in Delhi. She's a writer. She's a commentator, the cultural commentator on Twitter, and she's lived all over the world. And now I think she lives in Delhi. So welcome, Neena ji. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Samir. It's nice to be on the podcast and discussing Ayodhya right before we have completed the 1 year of Pran Pratishtha.
Right. Right. So yeah, so that's the one of the reasons that I wanted to bring it up. So we had this whole fanfare last year of Ram Janmabhoomi, the Ram Mandir inauguration, the Pran Pratishtha. How do you? So that's the reason. It's been a year. I think this year I read that they will be doing a first 1 year anniversary on the 11th as per the tithi. So it's a good time to touch back on the aspect of how Ayodhya is changing, right? So you've written the fascinating book. So I wanted to kind of touch upon what does Ayodhya mean to you, and what made you actually write this book. Was there a background that have you been kind of like had a fascination in terms of while growing up? Were you connected to Ayodhya in any sense?
There are many questions and there are as many answers. See, the Babri Masjid's demolition happened around my birthday. So every single birthday, that was what was played. But you cannot escape it, can you? So, and there are so many other things. It was an everyday reminder, and it was a everyday haranguing, every year annual haranguing of the Hindus. What a mean people we are. Why? Because we broke, some of us went and said that we want this temple back. You are not passing a judgment on all the people who broke 40,000 temples and more, and they're still breaking temples, but you have a problem that we are taking one temple. So where does this hypocrisy come from? And then of course I'm a Vaishnav, I'm a devout Vaishnav. So Ram and Sita and all of that, and Sita ji ki kathaएं hoti thi. So I remember attending these kathas in my house. I remember my grandparents' house. Everywhere it was Jai Shri Ram. Even the tulsi, the tulsi pot, we used to have the big tulsi pot in the garden. Jai Shri Ram was everywhere. Ram Ram is a greeting in India. How do you get away from Ram? I find it surprising that this question is asked. Ram is the essence of India. Ram and Krishna. If it's not them, then who are the essence? As in the masculine figures in India, right? They are the two
Right.
essences. So people who don't do this, I feel surprised. How did you grow up? Like, didn't you have any cultural influence? Didn't your parents and your grandparents teach you anything? That's the way I see it.
Okay. So that's a connect. So, but then, like, was there any personal or academic moment that said like, okay, I'm going to tackle this issue in the form of a book?
Yeah, so there were very specific issues that I decided that I'm going to tackle this as a book, because when the court case came that we are going to build a temple, I remember this narrative coming out in the market. Why do we need a temple? And I had friends of mine who were like, or acquaintances of mine who kept saying, why do we need a temple? We could have a hospital, we could have a library,
School,
a
yeah,
school. Well, we have enough schools, hospitals, and libraries in our country. I mean, look at the mohalla clinics. What's happening to them?
the infamous
The
in
infamous,
Delhi,
right?
yeah.
Now it's like वहाँ पे आके कुत्ते सोते हैं यहाँ वहाँ, right? So it's what's going on? And despite having schools, despite having free schools, are the children going to school? Despite having so many libraries, when was the last time you went to a library? People just make up things and say things for the
Because
sake
they
of saying.
sound good and like
They
sound
sound good.
compassionate and cool.
But when you ask them, and the point is, who are you to just pass judgments? Is that your land? Or does that belong to an akhada? Who are you? That akhada will make the decision, right? Is anybody coming and telling you, are you opening your doors to any refugees? Are you opening a hospital in your home? How many free hospitals have you opened? How many libraries have you opened? Do you even have 200 books in your house, or have you even read 200 books in your life? You want 1,000, like, that space is enough to hold 10,000 books. So these are logical fallacies that people will, just strange things people throw out, thinking that this makes sense. Because why? Because they have mimicked it from somebody on television, not giving it 2 cents of thought. Does it make sense or not? And I had heard it so much that I thought that if the next time I'm going to hear it, my ears will bleed. So I was like, this is enough. This is enough. And of course, I, as a student of Sanskrit, I was studying Ayodhya. I knew so much about Ayodhya. I'd already studied so much. I said, now there needs to be a book, because this is not going to shut up. And everybody kept focusing on the Babri Masjid. Nobody went back 500 years. Why did Babur demolish that masjid? Nobody is pointing the finger that why is the masjid called Babri? Babur is Babur. Why is it called Babri? Nobody wants to talk about the gay man who was the, like, dude, you broke a temple to name it on your lover? This doesn't happen, right? Like, and people are more offended by this than they're offended by the number of people who were killed. You see how the priorities are just warped in our country. And this is not warped priority, this is a narrative that people set,
Right.
and majority of the people not using their brains, they fall into that narrative. So this is it. These are some reasons. And of course, the communists, they, I wanted to, it's like usko aake todne ki. You go and demolish fake things. You don't do it, right? You
Yeah.
demolish things of value, right?
Right. Yeah.
You steal things of value. Does anybody go and steal trash?
Right.
Is anybody going to Gazipur Mandi and going to that Gazipur
Yeah.
hill of trash and, stealing trash? Nobody steals trash, right? People
Of
steal.
course.
So people demolish treasure, people steal treasure. It was a treasure and it was demolished for a reason. So this nobody says. And then nobody asks the question, why was the need and what was the story to demolish the Ram
Okay.
Janmabhoomi? So when you don't have these, you don't ask the right questions, you'll never get the right answers. And so I said, I'm going to give the answers as to why this happened. पूरी कड़ी को मैंने complete करने की कोशिश की थी.
Great, great. So, because of your background, I mentioned like you've been in the aviation sector. How did that journey happen to be a writer, and like what was the research process like in terms of were there any specific texts apart from I believe like a lot of it came from Valmiki Ramayana itself, but apart from that, were there any other references, any research methodologies, or any people that you relied upon for your research?
Okay, so you asked two things. How did my travel help me, and how did this help me, right? So I was a writer before I became a flight attendant, and I
Okay.
traveled. So, of course, I had traveled a lot even before I became a writer. My father was an army officer and a diplomat. So, when he was a diplomat, I have traveled lots of countries with him abroad. And of course, in India, I have traveled a lot. My interest in ancient cultures. So my interest was in ancient cultures and ancient
Hmm.
civilizations. That stems from my childhood. And I don't know who sowed the seeds of it. I have no memory of it. But I know that in fourth grade, I was reading the books of college going students that they were supposed to read. And I was reading these. Yes, so if you will read Amazing Ayodhya, I have said that this is for people, this is for also younger children who want to grasp things but are not able to. I could not even, so I was reading about civilizations that I couldn't put on the map. I wouldn't know how to see the map and, like, put it on. Okay, this is this country, this is this place that they're talking about. How is it? But I was very interested in their stories. And how did I get my hands on these kind of books? I got them because when I was very young, so my aunts were in college, so they had these books around, lying around in the house. So that's how I got my hands on these books, and I was like, wow, amazing! What is this? And that's my memory of it. And she said, you're reading the books that people we read in college. Like a fourth grader, fifth grader is reading these books. And I remember going through these books and not being able to understand certain concepts and things. And I thought, like, I wish they had more pictures. Pictures make it so easy to
Yeah, yeah,
understand, right? Because a picture is 1,000 words.
yeah,
I said, whatever I'm going to prove, and then of course it's praman, right? It's pratyaksh praman. It's not
yeah,
anuman. It's just
yeah.
pratyaksh praman.
So you don't have to put your mind to work and imagine. As a kid, you're more interested to look at pictures and get fascinated by the visuals.
Even
Yeah,
as adults,
right,
we can see a picture and understand immediately what they're talking about, right?
right.
So this is how I did things. And so this fascination to learn about ancient culture. So I already knew a lot about ancient culture. So when I read the Valmiki Ramayana in Sanskrit, I realized that a lot of things that is being stated here, I have seen it across the world. Of course, I had traveled as well out of my own interest in ancient cultures. I have traveled extensively. So I've been to Angkor Wat, I have been to Machu Picchu, I have been to Stonehenge. So, just traveling across and seeing and understanding things, it gave me a great insight. And I said, well, I saw this there, and I saw this here, and I saw this there.
So you're able to connect things and,
I was able
like,
to connect it, but
bring
just by
insights.
the virtue of my travel. That's it. And I remember I went to Italy, and I asked my father. I went to Milan. I went to here and there, and I was with my parents. And I said, "Can we go to Naples, please?" He's like, "That's really far down." And what's there? I said, "I want to see those." You remember in Naples, there's these places that are frozen because of that volcanic eruption.
The Pompeii.
Yeah, Pompeii. So I said I wanted to see those, frozen, because that's frozen in time, right? So he says,
Right,
well,
right.
that's very
Yeah.
fine. I remember that I was not able to do it because I was so fascinated. I lived in Egypt as well, by the way. So
Oh,
I
wow.
have been to the pyramids. I've
Pyramids.
studied about the Egyptian culture. I have, and it's fascinating,
I've heard
really.
that one of the museums there in Cairo is one of the best museums in the world. I don't know what's happened to it, because during the revolution there were people who had destroyed parts of the
I've
museum.
seen it before the revolution. It was very nice. It is also very
Mm,
well maintained. I mean, they have so much treasure that they have kept,
right,
despite the fact that so much was looted by the cave robbers, right?
right.
So, and I have gone in and seen the mummies. So you have to pay extra to go and see the mummies. And I remember going and seeing the mummies and seeing henna dyed hair. They still had the henna on their hairs.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really amazing. And I remember, and they're all kept in this position, like
Yeah.
obviously because this is how
All the mummies. Yeah.
you would put them. So in India, we put people to sleep straight with the hands
Right.
next to them.
I think
But in
also
many
the.
of them, they have done this. So there is a reason why you put. So I saw them. I remember, and looking at their nails and just being absolutely fascinated by the whole thing. So you could see their nails. You could see it's well preserved, very well. For so many years, thousands of years, it's very well done. And of course, going inside the pyramids and all of that is also very exciting. So just giving you a glimpse that I had already done so much. So it made
Mm,
absolute sense to me to put a book in, in writing and explain to the world that what they're talking of Ayodhya is not fiction. This I have seen
right.
across the world. This was the culture back then, and in most likelihood, Ayodhya was a prototype. And even in Egypt, the names of the kings are like Shashank.
Hmm.
We have Hindu names. Apparently, somebody did a genetic test and they found that a lot of Egyptians have Indian genes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so Indian
So
genes
even
are
there were
all
like
over the world.
names, and then they changed it later. What they're like different Egyptian names. How
Yeah,
does the
they have
Shashank?
Islamic names right now. And
Right.
the most famous Egyptian dish is called kushari, which is like khichdi.
Usually.
Mix it, and in that you'll have rice, noodles, dal, everything like mixed together. So and
Yeah.
that became my favorite dish. That's really tasty. So if anybody ever
Yeah.
goes to Egypt, they must try kushari. And
Yeah.
Egyptians, by the way, they really, a lot of them, at least till when I was there, they really liked Indians.
Yeah.
They do,
They have a
and
lot of fascination. I
yeah, a
think
lot
one
of
thing,
fascination.
every Egyptian I come across, they say Amitabh Bachchan and Shah Rukh Khan.
Yeah, yeah, they have, and in fact, it was so popular that the Egyptian film industry banned the Indian film industry there. And I remember when I was in Egypt first, I was still a teenager when I had gone there. I think I don't remember; it's many years ago. And there used to be this one person, and I lived in Zamalek, which is the diplomatic area. And some one person who lived around there driving in a BMW X4, that small that sports car.
Right.
All the time he was playing that song "Ek Dil
In,
Chahiye" that's made in India. They really, yeah, I remember these. Like, it was just fascinating. I was like, whoa, I had no idea. I had no idea that India is so popular in Egypt.
Yeah. So, in terms of this research, right? So, when it comes to specifically Ayodhya and you're writing this book, were there any aspects that you were able to discover which were not in public domain before? Specific aspects which surprised you, and you put it out there in the book.
Yeah, so there were many aspects actually, and also asked me about the research, like what did I use. So my main research base was Valmiki Ramayana, main.
Okay.
And whatever I read in the shloks, in order for it to make sense, I researched further. There were some shocking things that I didn't understand, which is like they imported hippopotamuses.
Wow. Yeah, that's something you write about. I think it's in the last section, right, about the
Yeah,
pets and
and
animals.
some people are like, no, no, Nadija is like, so the word for them that they've used is Nadija. Nadijaha. So Nadija means that which is born in a Nadi. Aj means born, and Nadi means jo Nadi mein paida hua hai, right? So, for example, Ambuj. Ambuj is Brahma, who is born from Ambu. Ambu is celestial waters, right?
Okay.
So, water. So, this is Aj, Nadija. So these, I'm just giving you the Sanskrit background of these names.
Right.
So that which is born in water. And some, a lot of some specific translators have gone and said Nadija means like Punjab, because it's the land of seven rivers or land of five rivers. It doesn't mean Punjab, because if it meant Punjab, then we would have the surnames Nadija instead of having Sindhu and Sindhu. Like the surnames that you find in Punjab for the Sikhs are Sandhu, Sindhu, Siddhu. Where
Hmm.
are these surnames coming from? These are coming from the Sindh,
Right.
where Sindh. So
Okay.
for example, Sendhav, Namak. These are the surnames
Hmm.
of that area.
Okay.
He says that they are importing horses, like these are horses that are being imported. This is a place, this is a land, this is the land that they're importing it from. Every country that is mentioned from where the horses are being imported, so horses and hippopotamuses, they are being imported, they are saying the name of the country as well. Okay, so, and there are names like Bahalik, Kamboj. We still have these surnames in our country, but I haven't come across a surname called Nadija. If it's a
Okay.
country, you understand what I'm trying to say.
Right.
For example, the Bahaliks, you will find the surname called Behel in our country. So,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
again, these are Punjabis, most of them in that side. Then you have surnames like Kamboj, again Kambo, Kamboj, these are all Punjabi
Right.
surnames.
Right.
Okay, so this was one thing that I found. The Sanskrit description also says, it's hippopotamus. Then the Valmiki Ramayana in Hindi clearly says it's hippopotamus. It's only in English that they have said that this is not a hippopotamus. So, and I was very fascinated. So the research, then I remember speaking to Meenakshi Jain, and I took some details from her. I said, they have found these details. And she says, do you know they've excavated this really old hippopotamus from this area. They've just
Like the
found,
fossil.
yeah. So
Wow.
not exactly from, so they found it in Narmada Valley, the
Okay.
50,000-year-old species,
Okay.
and it was alive till 15,000 years ago. Okay, so how did that get there? That means there were hippopotamuses in that area, right? We've had
Right.
hippopotamuses, right? So these are kind of fascinating things that I came across. And of course, I went and I've written about it. Where was this excavated? How was it? And so this was one fascinating thing. Then another fascinating thing that I saw was the Viman, the house shapes in Ayodhya. So the house shapes in Ayodhya, it says clearly that it is shaped on the Vimans of the gods, the shapes of the house. And I said, what do you mean the Vimans of the gods? And so I said, what are these events? They are the Vimans and the Vimans of the gods. And I said, what? Even I didn't believe all of this. Then I said, okay, let me research. Then I opened Samranga Sutradhar and I said, what are these Vimans and what are the shapes? Because there are many types of Vimans and many types of
Yeah.
shapes. Then I learned that we had only heard of Pushpak Viman. There are five types of Vimans.
Okay.
And there were five prototype Vimans, and they were very interesting. And Brahma had gotten them made, one for himself, one for Vishnu, one for Kuber, and one for Shiv, and all of that. So Shiva's thing is Kailash. Vishnu's is called Trivishta, and Kuber's is called Pushpak. So all of these names are given in the book, by the way. And so then I kept reading on it. Of course, because it was about Ayodhya, then I didn't want to go elaborate too much on the Viman, because then that would distract from the topic.
Right.
And then I read everything was in gold. So the Vimans were covered in gold. Do you know that even today, when we send satellites in space, we put gold
Right.
foiling on them?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I
Right?
think
So,
yeah, the conductivity and like I don't know the coefficients in space, like they fare better. I don't know the exact physics properties. Yeah.
and that's exactly what is written in Samranga Sutradhar, that the gods of the ancients was covered in gold, and it was Shrimanti
Interesting.
and Mahanti. And that those shloks are written in the book. And in certain places, I have seen these shloks, and the shloks have errors as well, and I've corrected those errors too.
Okay.
Too many things. I mean, I've my book, I like, okay, it's not that I wrote this book because I think it's really great. I wrote this book because I discovered so many interesting facets.
Okay.
So therefore I wrote this book, because I thought, because if I am the only one who knows this knowledge, and if I'm the only one who's talking about it, then people used to be like, what are you talking about? That's bizarre. That's bizarre. I said, no, that's not bizarre. Let's
Right.
just, people are like, because people are like, oh, Lanka was of gold. I said, no, no, no,
Mm.
no. Even Ayodhya was made of gold. And we see this even today. The Garbhagriha of all the temples
Hmm.
is gold. It's filled with
Right.
silver and gold, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are a lot of ornaments and jewels, and
And
the
the Devi, or
crowns is made of gold and
correct,
stuff.
and the Devi or Devta always sits under the Viman,
Right.
which is a pyramidal
And you
structure.
have a elaborate description of what is a viman and the etymology of like the word. It comes out in the book, right?
Yes,
So
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, yes. So
Right.
Viman doesn't mean a flying aircraft.
That's what, because that colloquially we have gotten to believe that, because in South Indian languages as well, a viman directly means like an aircraft,
So, for
right?
example, geyser. See, we all know what a geyser is, but
Right.
is that what a geyser is? No, it's not a
Yeah.
geyser.
No. Yeah.
Geyser is a
It's a
natural
very
phenomena that happens.
natural.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. But because
Geographical
brand
phenomena. Yeah.
is called geyser, one of the first brands was called geyser. So that's the reason we have that. Refrigerator, same with refrigerator. We call every of those blocks is called fridge, because
Right.
the first brand was called refrigerator. So the real meaning of Viman is also given in my book. And just for the viewers, I'll explain it. This is called man. This man is a unit of measurement. There are many
Right.
units of
Okay.
measurement.
Right.
That, so whenever we add vi before anything, like vibha, viman, or vigyan, right? Gyan. So what is gyan? Gyan is just general knowledge, right? But if you specialize in a knowledge, if you make it scientific through many, many tests, through testing, through measuring, through, then it becomes a science. So when you purify it, right? When you go into the details of it, so it becomes Vigyan, which is science. We use it in science, right?
So the
Vigyan.
V is the specificity that adds
Yeah,
the
it is the
prefix.
refinement, specificity, and it is from all round.
Okay.
Yeah, so all round, from all corners. So empirical, that which has been empirically tested, which is in detail. So man, so we man, that which is like in detailed measured.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to give you a
Great.
brief of how it should be. So we man, that which has been measured. And if you want to build any spacecraft, any
Right.
aircraft, it has to have
Very
precise
precise. Yeah.
measurement.
Very precise.
That is the real meaning of a Viman.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
that which is very precisely measured. And even if you take a look at our temples, take a look at the
Hmm.
Viman, it's most precisely measured and made.
Yeah.
All our
Yeah.
temples are very precise. You cannot even have an inch of a problem in either an aircraft or an airplane, because all these pieces are assembled. If you have even a little
Yeah.
bit
Even
of,
like a bolt missing thing we've been seeing for the last couple of, like, not couple, but I think since the Malaysian Airlines flight went down, we've been seeing so many incidents because of minor issues like a bolt loosening up, or like a device, small, probably technical malfunction, and
I'll tell
leading
you
to
that I read about a
disaster.
crash. I read about a crash because when they were cleaning the aircraft, they put a tape on a particular wing.
Window.
Wing,
Uh,
wing, wing.
Wing. Okay, wing. Okay.
They put a tape, and the airplane crashed because of the tape at that particular place.
Yeah.
So, any little, this is why you will always notice the captain or the first officer always going and physically inspecting every part of the aircraft.
At least the visible parts.
Yes, they no, they also go and visit the hold underneath. So,
Okay.
where the people are sitting, there
So
is
they
a
do it
hold.
every
Every
flight.
flight. Ideally, they are supposed to do every flight. Yes. So,
Okay.
so good captains, and yeah, they do that. And especially in international flights, they do it all the more. So yeah, because I remember when I left Dubai and I came to India, my cat came with me. I used to have a cat, and I specifically wrote a message. And anybody who's listening, they must do this. And I wrote it on a paper and I sent it to him. And I told the flight attendant, I said, "Can you please give this to the captain?" And so she came back and she said, "My cat's in the hold. I want the captain to read this. Please give it." So she came back to me and she says, "The captain has already seen your cat when he was, when he was
Checking the hold.
checking the hole. He's already seen it. There are other animals as well. So be rest assured." When why I'm saying this is because sometimes the captains are not very careful, and it has happened to people I kind of know of. The air conditioning, if you don't switch it on in the hold, the animal down there, whatever living being is, sometimes people take pets and dogs and cats there in the hold. Now they're allowing them to be carried upstairs. They freeze to death. So the captains and all of them, they have to be very, very careful about all of this. So some of them do a great job. We land
Okay.
every time safely. Somebody is doing a good job.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's a nice detour. Thanks for that information. Coming back to the historical aspect, right? And that's one of the things that you were just touching upon. I want to ask you a question. It's a little off track, but from the scientific methodology point of view, when especially we research our Indian knowledge systems and the historical aspects of it, right? Because this is one of the things like the Pushpak Viman, which is usually ridiculed that, oh, so you mean to say Hindus actually had aircrafts, like, as per Hinduism, as per Hindu, civilizational thing. We try to mention this point, right? But then that's the thing that people get mocked about. So some people try to make it in terms of, oh, no, 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 they were not actually aircraft. It was more of a metaphor, or like, no, they were not real flying objects. So, and the question is not just about the Pushpak Viman. The question is about how do you sift between when we read a historical text and try to understand how do we make that rational, like basically how do we rationalize that in terms of the modern scientific thought, at least from an empirical, like when I say modern scientific, I'm trying to say whatever is like in the western scientific process, the empirical, like we will believe only when we see it, right? Like when it's proven, when it's empirical and data oriented. Whereas like, if there is a certain text where we can corroborate and say like, xyz phenomenon existed, or like there was a knowledge of, let's say, even though there was not a real flying object that was put into the space using the same principles of Newton's laws of motion, there might be some other phenomenon, or there might be a theoretical understanding of these things, right? And they might be writing about things, they might be making sculptures about a flying object and all. So that could have been in an imagination. So but then how do we as a researcher, how do you make that distinction between what is true and what is backable, and what is something that we can actually put out as a real fact?
So, first of all, I would like to tell you that it is very arrogant of people to think that aircrafts did not exist in the yesteryears, in the ancient times. I'll tell you why this is arrogant. This is arrogant because having more than a billion planets around, or billion stars or planets, you think we are the only ones with life?
Well, I think it's Carl Sagan who says like the both possibilities are scary. Whether if it's this us, or like if there is somebody like us somewhere, that's also scary, and if it's just us, that's also scary. So I still don't know where I fall on that question, but yeah, I get the point.
Okay, just because we are, so here it is, how far are we from the center of the galaxy? And then the question is, how many galaxies are there? We're
Right.
at the outer end. So we were like, we don't even know what's happening in the inner end. We don't know what's happening in the other side, right? There is nothing that the other scriptures will tell you. And most of the people who are doing this modern research, how long have they been doing this research for?
Yeah,
100 years?
probably 100 years. Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
100 years, you think that you have enough of data that you have acquired to contradict something, to contradict a civilization which goes back as much as 10,000 years and earlier?
Right.
What have you seen? In
Makes
100 years,
sense.
you've
Yeah.
not seen anything, right? In earlier times, people believed, just a few hundred years ago, that the human body was only made up of blood, because when you cut a human body, only blood comes out, so the human body contains blood. Now we know the other things that are in the human body, right? So when you read things like personalities, they how they divide personalities, they divided personality based on what was inside them. So what we so somebody is a cuff personality, somebody vat pit cuff, right? Have you
Mm.
ever seen,
Yeah.
has anybody even seen vat? Can you see vat? Can you see air?
Yeah, you can't.
These are
You
things that
can't.
you need to deduce. Now, when it comes to deciding what is right and what is wrong, so first of all, they're arrogant if they think they are the only people, and that in ancient times people would not have come. Let's say that there are these people in either another dimension or on another planets, right? They have come. Number one. Number two, I would never close that door on us. Ultimately, let us imagine if in our own time, not only have we seen aircrafts dot our skies, but Elon Musk, who wants to now go and have a colony on Mars. You
Yeah.
think that in other places there are not people who have wanted to have a colony on Earth? If there
Yeah.
is another superior
Yeah. Yeah.
race,
Yeah, I think when you optimize that consciousness, at some point it'll start exploring other aspects of
we are a part
their
of the
surroundings.
we are a part of
Yeah.
the universe. We feel the need to connect with more people of our own kind. If they are not there, we feel the need to seed ourselves across the world, so that what is the rationale even Elon is giving? He's saying that if something happens to Earth, we should have more seeds across, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So when you take a look at other cultures and you find out, so, for example, in Timbuktu, there was a people, they studied these people, and they were a very ancient people, and they said that they were seeded by people. There were some people who visited them from Sirius in
The
the
star.
Orion's belt. There is a star called Sirius. There are two
Sirius.
stars, Sirius A and Sirius B, and they expired. So there was a supernova. So their sun went out, so they had come to Earth. These are documented, and at that point they made the rotation of Earth around, or the planets around the sun, in elliptical shape. And at that point we thought that it was all round, it was not even an
Mm.
ellipse.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
So that man knew more than, at that point, what was the prevalent science. And please understand, science is changing. What is a theory today was not a theory yesterday.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is theory? Okay, and every time, every day, we come across new discoveries,
Right.
right? If people don't know what they are looking for, they cannot discover it. There is this huge motion to discredit everything that is ancient, and it stems from the fact that the Bible said that barely 6,000, it is only 6,000 years that the earth has come, the
Right.
sun has come, and the solar system has come. So we are only 6,000 years old, right? There was this huge concept. Are we 6,000 years old? Or are we
No, that,
4 billion years old?
at least from whatever is proven so far,
They're at
we
least
are,
4
yeah,
billion years old.
4 billion. So yeah.
At least, right? So
Right.
you're saying in the 4 billion historical years of Earth, this could not have happened. So you see, the when you talk logically, when you talk of the existence of Earth, this will fall flat. Now I'll explain to you what is valid and what is not valid. This is why we have Puran, and this is why we have Itihas. So Itihas, this is how it happened. This is Itihas, right? So Ramayana and Mahabharata is taken as Itihas. This is exactly what happened. This is what it is. And then Purans are taken with a pinch of salt, because these are very highly coded symbological things that are happening there. Now, for example, from the tears of Atri, now they say this planet was formed from the tears of Atri. They're describing, so I'm just giving you lines. This is a line in the Quran. What they are describing is that they're describing the physical, not the physical process that somebody is born from the tears of somebody. No, they are describing an astronomical phenomena, which if you read back would make sense. For example, I'll give you another thing. The sun is called Martand. which
Yeah.
is short for Mrit And, a dead egg.
Okay.
So when the son was born, it was like a dead egg. It wasn't very active. It did not have that kind of fusion. So then they have
It
made,
was, yeah, it was still free, like, colder
yeah,
than what
yeah,
it
it
is right
wasn't
now.
it wasn't acting up. Okay. So it wasn't acting up the way it was supposed to. Acting up is
Okay.
in a negative word. So it is called mritan. Okay, so these are the names that are given to describe certain phenomena.
Celestial events, huh?
Yeah, celestial events. And Aditi, the names are given like this to for people to memorize and to keep it in our system. But something like Viman, you don't. This is not a this is a thing that they are saying that this has happened. And there, I could go on and on, of course. And then there are similes, like for example, they talk of the age of Sita, right? So they say that Sita is saying in the Valmiki Ramayana she is 18 and 20, and Ramji is 25 when they have
Right.
married, right?
Right.
This is a
And
wrong
this is a
thing.
big subject of debate as well,
And I
right?
have tried to clarify this on Twitter as well.
Right. Right.
And I have clearly said, and so this is an ignorance that happens when you only take a line out of context and not give the whole context. Now, do people understand which is the philosophy? I mean, I'll ask you as well. Do you know the philosophy that was prevalent during the time of Valmiki Ramayana, during the time of Ram and Sita?
Not particularly, no.
Hindu. Okay. So the philosophy that was popular there was Sankhya philosophy.
Sankhya. Okay.
Sankhya
Yeah.
means numbers.
Okay.
So they had denoted everything with numbers. Purush and Prakriti had numbers. So
Okay.
Prakriti had 18 and Purusha 24 or 25. So, depending on the text you read, so it differs from 1819 to 2425, right? So the meaning of Purush and Prakriti coming together is that they are a man and woman for life. They will not take another partner. So it's Ek Patni Vrat and Ek Pati Vrat, which Ram and Sita had taken. Ram and all his brothers had taken Ek Patni Vrat and Ek Pati Vrat for each other, simply because Sita's family, Janak had only one wife.
Okay.
Okay, whereas on Dashrath's side, Dashrath had, I think, 350 wives. Yes, I think so. And some
So
say it's
three,
700.
three, four is the it's three is the one that is usually mentioned, right?
They are the
The
Pataranis.
okay, the
So,
Ranis.
they have the title. So Dashrath was an emperor.
Right. Right.
So these were empresses,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
others would be ranis. Ranis are
Okay.
just normal queens,
Right.
they're just women that he has in the court. Okay, or
Okay.
not in the court. They were not. So king. And if it's a lower status man, you would call them maybe for a very small king, it's concubines.
Right. Right.
But he's a big king, right? He's an
Right.
emperor. So they are called queens. So there'll be queens and then there will be empresses. So, for
Okay.
example, Ravan had 1,000 queens,
Okay.
but he had only one empress, that was Mandodari.
Mandodari. Mandodari. Yeah.
And so when he abducted Sita, he promises to her that all of these women will be your dasis.
Mm.
Like you'll be over them if you
Right.
marry me. And that
Okay.
I'm going to move their ranks to be
Mm.
under you. And so she says, no, I don't. So,
Right.
she disagrees with all of this, right? So you must understand. And now people will come to judge all of this. No, there's no need to judge all of this. This was a prevalent culture in the time. And
Mm-hmm.
this is how they were, living and behaving. And Ram was a different sort of a person. And when Ravan came, she says to him, she says that I'm already married. She's not going to say this one whole thing, I am already married. So see, understand, this is poetry, right?
Ah,
In
right.
poetry you don't write things the way they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So, and if you
You'll use a lot of ornamentation. You use a lot of
so she
descriptive
says, when we
metaphor.
married, I was 18 and he was 25, meaning to say that we are man and wife forever. He's not going to take another wife, and I'm not going to take on another husband, because they would take on other husbands and wives.
Mm.
Mandodari, after her husband died, she's married to the brother Vibhishan, right? She takes on another husband.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
understand
Right.
so you understand what I'm
I
saying?
think even Wali Sugriva, there is like, it happens. I think Sugriva, like Wali marries Sugriva's wife, right?
Yes.
So.
So this concept of having one man and one wife, there were quite a few people who used to practice this. So Janak also used only had one wife, and Ram and Sita, because they were married there, so they married according to their rules and traditions. That meant only one wife for every
Okay.
one man.
So it was a specific sampradaya, would you say?
Yes, yes. Which is the Hindu sampradaya. In Hinduism, you're not, matlab, they say that you have extra wives and, all of that, but that's not true. Ram and Sita, Janak and, his wife, they are the ones who are following this. And also in Devi Puran, when Shumb and Nishum, they want to marry the Devi. So they send their messenger and say, you should marry them. She says a very strange line, and it's very rude. Even Sita was very rude when this was said. She says, when a lioness is in the season, she doesn't go and mate with a donkey, a rabbit, an elephant, or whatever. So, no, I am not going to be with them because I am the Sukshma Prakriti of Shiv. Like, she says, I am the Sukshma Prakriti. Like, I am the Prakriti of Shiv. So, Shiv, so this is what I'm saying, right? Prakriti, in the Sankhya Yoga, there's Prakriti and Purush. So she's already taken. She's, forever she's with one guy. She's not going to go with another guy. So you have to have had read many different, books or scriptures, or at least have this sort of an understanding. What was the
A
prevalence?
layered understanding.
Yes, a layered understanding. You cannot put that in today's terms and say, no, this was her age. No, this was not her age.
Yeah.
Remember, Sita is an orphan. Her
Yeah.
age is not
She
decided.
was found,
Yes.
yeah, in the
And there,
fields.
and there was no Swamvar in the Valmiki Ramayana. Sita Swamvar did not happen. Ramji did not have an invitation. He goes there and he says, I want to see the Dhanush. The Janakji asks him twice, are you sure this is the story? My daughter will be married to you if you can do this.
Okay.
He asks her. So, and I don't read any mention of Ravan, but I do read the mention of other kings who have attacked because their egos were hurt because they could not lift the
Okay.
and so when people have done this, they have done this to deduct the age of Sita and bring it to 6, and we know who they are mimicking there. So it's like,
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
just because your thing has
It's
6.
trying to bring a false equivalence to it, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
that's
this is
also
what
one
they're
of
trying
the
to do, which is a lie,
argumentative fallacies. Yeah.
because Hindu law is very strict. Hindu law says openly, you cannot get your daughter married off before puberty. Right after she reaches puberty, from the day she reaches puberty till after 3 years, it is the duty of the father to find her the best man. Var is called the best man. Var, the word var is means the best man, who, for whom the best suitable, the best man for the girl, for the dulhan,
Right.
right, for your daughter.
Right.
If you are unable to do it, only then will she have a swamvar.
Okay.
Swamvar means I am selecting. She has the right to have a swamvar.
Okay.
She has the right to go anywhere and have.
Interesting.
This is the Hindu law. Okay. And even in Chanakya's time, he has said this as the Hindu law. And then he says no one can get their daughter married before the age of 12, which is must have been the average age of puberty at that time.
Puberty.
Even today, the average age of puberty is around 12 to 13, 12, 13, 14, right? This is the average age. So he says before 12, you can't get your daughters married anyways. So you have to understand the laws of ancient times and the legality. So this is Chanakya, but previously we had this. So what does Swamvar mean? So Draupadi had a Swamvar. And then in the Swamvars, they have, there's something called a Virya Shulka.
Okay.
A Virya Shulka means whose price is Virya. Virya Shulka. Virta jiski price hai. Who has to be won by bravery? Who has to be
Okay.
won by skill? So what was that bravery? What was their skill? So every, there is a minimum qualification for the men to have to be able to win that princess, because she's a princess, right?
Right.
If princesses could be married off to just any random people, I mean, would you just marry your daughter to any random person? Would
You
you?
wouldn't. Yeah. Right. So you want to have like a match which is compatible.
And these are
Yeah. The
emperors.
qualifying factors. Yeah.
Exactly. So they had even higher and more stricter and something that you couldn't surpass. And
Right.
so this is how they did it. And even in, for that matter, and you'll read other kings and queens as well, that who had swambers. So why are they having swambers all the time? The king's daughters were having swambers because they were not willing to let go of their daughters.
Okay.
So it is the poor and the common man who's first willing to get rid of his daughter at a very young age, right? Never the kings. And so even in the Valmiki Ramayan, he keeps saying, my daughter Sita is more important to me than my own life. Pran Pyari Sita. Two men keep calling her Pran Pyari. And Janak. Both of Sita, mere प्राणों se pyari Sita. Do you know that one king's ego was so bruised that he was not able to lift the dhanush, that he attacked Ayodhya, and he attacked Mithila, and he sieged that place. He sieged Janakpur for 1 whole year. He fought that battle. It took, and then he says,
Just because he was offended.
just because his ego was hurt. And Janak talks about it in the book. I haven't written these details in my book because my book is about Ayodhya,
Ayodhya,
not about the Swamvar, not about these things, right?
the Ramayan, the story aspects of it, because I think like there are still a lot of instances where they have been written about from a story point of view. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. They have been. Also, what happens is that when, at that point, Ayodhya was the topic. So
Yes.
discussing that was, in my opinion, irrelevant, and that should have been discussed later. It is now that this point is being raised. Earlier, they were not raising the point. So I noticed that what happens is that first they keep targeting something. After the release of my book, nobody's saying, oh no, it wasn't there. And now that we have the historical proof, now that we have the archaeological survey saying that this is there, now that you have a
Right.
book on
And
Ayodhya,
we've gone through the process
we've gone
of
through
like
this.
legal process and like
Yeah, so what they have,
identifying archaeological. So every aspect has been covered, and finally they said, okay, now we don't have like an argument, at least where we can go in the straight. So now they have to come in a
so
different
they
route.
will come up with something new, right? This
Yeah.
was a non-argument a few years earlier. This was the argument a few years earlier. We've
Right.
sorted this argument, so they
Yes.
have to they have to make a new controversy to show us down, to show us
Right.
that we are bad people. How will they do it? They will do it by twisting these things. Because till the time I was growing up, till a few years ago, they were saying Ramayana is mythological.
Yeah, and Ayodhya like did not exist, and it's a mythical city and all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So it wasn't happening. Then now that conversation is not there. Now, no, of course they were real. And look how bad he was marrying a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
So, you understand what I'm saying? They'll
Yeah.
keep changing. So they'll come up, they'll take, this is what they do with Manusmriti. This is what
Right.
they have done with every scripture. They will find one word,
Yeah.
somebody said something. So, anyways,
Yeah. And
we've
also
sorted,
the this sorry.
I said we've sorted this. We'll
Yeah.
sort that also.
Yeah, of course. So there is like all the other aspects, like we keep talking about with some other scholars and all. I don't want to go into it a little detail just because you brought it up. Like the goal of discrediting the text, even with Ramayana, a lot of the left liberal intelligentsia, whenever they speak about Ramayana and the aspect of the just king, or like the philosopher king, which Sri Ram was after the war, and like after they go back to Ayodhya, and like what actually happens. So there is this story of, I forgot, Shambuk. Yeah, Shambuk, and like the stories. So it is, but then it's not in the original
It's not in the
Valmiki
original
Rama,
text. Yeah,
right?
it's not in
So
the original text.
so a lot of interpretations and addendums that came. So there is still a discussion on, like when I speak to people, we don't know at what point they got added and what was the idea behind adding it. Were there, like were they even real instances? Because at least from the Valmiki Ramayana aspect, there we can chronologically say that, okay, this happened, and so this story existed because we have geographical records, we have scriptural records. There's so many instances, there are cultural legends and so many of it. But then there are some things like which are brought up just to discredit. So and when you read them, you find like, okay, what was the intent behind it? What was it specifically done, and like at what age was this done? Because in India, civilizationally, we have gone through upheavals even before the modern colonization, so to say, happened. Even before that, we've had like waves of neo, what do you say, enlightenment movements through Buddhism and Jainism, where there was a deviation from the Vedic thought and enlightenment that was there, so to say. And through these periods, like, at what point were these added, and what was the idea behind it? It's still
I think
mollifies
that
country,
this a lot of this was added to discredit Ram
right?
and to reduce his importance or reduce whatever.
On the psyche of Indian.
Yeah, to hurt the psyche because he was praised so much and his character is quite impeccable. That they must have felt that, look, we can't match up to this man. What is it that a narcissist likes to do? So a narcissist hates a perfect person, a narcissist hates a successful person, a narcissist hates an ethical person, and a narcissist doesn't feel at peace unless they bring that person down to their level. So whosoever has done it is done it because they can't compete with Ram, or their idols cannot compete with their men, cannot compete with Ram. Therefore, they will try and bring it down. In fact, in my book, in the beginning of my book, I have written the shlok, which it says that now we are going to tell you the story of the Ramayana, right? So Ayodhya is like when the Valmiki Ramayana starts, okay? Because before that is the introduction. So in Hindu scriptures, we don't have a book that says, okay, this is preface, this is introduction, now this is chapter one. So preface and all of this is like a part of the book itself.
Yeah, it's that straight away jumps into the.
Chapter one is preface. Okay, so preface is that Valmiki is asking that who is this man, who is all these qualities, so asking his guru Narad. So Narad is saying there is this man, and Valmiki, then the story of the Valmiki and Bhardwaj and all that comes. And right before, it's Sarg 5. So chapter 5 is where the story of Ramayana starts, and it starts
Right,
from Ayodhya. So
right.
right before in chapter, it's Love and Kush say, listen without envy.
Hmm. Yeah, that's where they start singing, right? And that we are going to tell you the story.
And it says listen without envy envy or spitefulness is like anasuya, anasuyata, or jealousy. So it's jealousy, envy, spitefulness, right? To such an epic. And it says what? Endowed with which three values? The three values are dharma, arth, and kam. There is no moksha. Okay, so for moksha, you have to go and read another book, which Valmiki has himself composed, which is a dialogue between Ram and Valmiki ji, right?
Okay.
So
Okay,
that
I
is
didn't
the
know
one
about
for,
this.
yeah. So Valmiki hasn't only written the Valmiki Ramayana, Valmiki has also written other things. So the dialogue between him and Ram, no, is it him and no, it's Vashisht and Ram. So it's
Okay,
Vash,
the
sorry, my
guru,
bad. Yeah, I just said
their
dialogue
guru.
between him and Ram. So it's a dialogue between Vashisht and Ram, and they're discussing Sankhya and they're discussing liberation, they're discussing about life, they're discussing
It's
all of.
more like an existential. Was there a crisis? Like, why were they even discussing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it says dharma, arth, and kam. So it's just, so this is why I'm saying there is, and people say, oh no, this was not this. This is a celestial phenomena. This is what happens. Lakshya man, hamara man ka lakshya hota hai. No, goodness sake, lakshya man doesn't mean hamara man ka lakshya. The meaning of Lakshman means though that person who is born with auspicious marks, जो शुभ लक्षणों के साथ पैदा हुआ है वो लक्ष्मण है. You understand what I'm saying, and so they will twist all these things. There is no ulterior meaning to Ramayan. It is
Right.
only dharm, arth, and kam. That's it. And for moksha, you have the Vashisht and the Ram dialogue to
Okay.
read. Yog Vash. It's called Yog Vashisht. It's written by
Okay.
Valmiki only.
Okay. Interesting. That seems to be a good read, because
It's
I mean, when I want to understand, I mean, naturally, our impression about existentiality and about moksha, like all of a lot of that comes from the Gita, right? So where like Sri Krishna is talking about, because the existential crisis, per so to say, happens in the Hindu psychology, comes from Arjuna's dilemma. where there is like so much that okay, we'll leave all this, like let's go and like let's go become rishis in Himalaya.
Because he refused to fight his own people. He's like, well, I'm
Yeah,
going to lose everything, right? This is
yeah,
his dilemma.
yeah,
He's like, I
yeah.
can't do this. This is what's going to happen. This is so yeah, existential. So no, Ram also had it.
Right. So it will be interesting to read the
It's
perspective
huge.
from.
It's huge.
So coming back to Ayodhya, right? So you spend a lot of time in the book on the physical. So when I was picking up the book, I was thinking a lot from a historical aspect, or like as we've been discussing the Ramayan aspects, like the story aspect of the kavya, right, the literary aspect. But then I was surprised to find that this is like more of a, it's like a guide, it's like a Lonely Planet guide. So it tells you how the city was, how the people, how the battalions, and one thing that I learned from the book about the Chaturangi Sena, and from one of your talks, the Chadaranga meaning comes from yeah. So the modern word for chess is chadrang, and the chadurang, like the four um, uh, bhujas, like the four arms of the army. And so then it was like, wow. So you spend a lot of time on the etymology of the Sanskrit grammar and the methodology, as well as the city aspect, right? So and then you use multiple places that you make this distinction, and that Ayodhya is an Ayodhya Nagari or Puri, right? And then the feminine and the masculine aspects of the words. So if you might touch upon, so I'm trying to, because like with the temple and the modernization, now this is my thought, like because temples are like the center, like always been the center of our dwellings, if I may say, like wherever, like even in the south, every kingdom, every city, every historical place has a temple as its core, right? And Ayodhya back in the day was that. So was it always like that, like what we talk about Kashi as a living city that has been there forever, right? So was Ayodhya was also like that? And
No.
how much of that was important? Was it like the core of our Indian identity?
Yeah, it became so. You see, when we speak of Kashi and Ayodhya, there are seven cities, right? Saptapuri. There are seven capitals that you have. That there are these are Mokshadai capitals, right? Why are
Okay.
they Mokshadai? So they are Mokshadai because of their antiquity, because of the values, because of the way they are constructed. So human beings in Vastu Shastra are not different from their surroundings, right? We have to blend in our surroundings. We have to live comfortably. If you live in bad houses, it's going to have a very bad repercussion on you. So let's just say this is it. If you live in a badly organized city, how is that going to help you? Is not going to help you, right? And so Ayodhya, so now please understand, we are talking of this manvantar, we are not talking of
Hmm.
previous manvantars. Was there life on earth before previous manvantars? Of course there was life on earth. I don't know how many even old these manvantars are, okay? So but we are talking of Manu. Now you can say Manu is after Ice Age or Manu is before Ice Age. We don't even know that whether it is before or after Ice Age. But what I'm trying to say is that Ayodhya was a prototype. Why? Because when Manu came, this is the first city that he establishes. He first establishes the capital, which is Ayodhya Puri. Then Ayodhya, of course. And then during the time of Dashrath expands it. I mean, every king must have expanded. Dashrath expands it even more. So it's like a very big mega city, right?
So becomes Kosala, that's what becomes Kosala, like
No,
the
no,
empire is not so.
no, no,
So
no.
it's still, so Ayodhya itself as a city expands.
Yes. So, for example, the let's say America is a country; it has its own capital. India is a country; it has its own capital. For example, in the earlier times, they had unions. So, for example, let's say take a look at the European Union. Now, in earlier times, they had kings and queens or emperors and empires. For example, Roman emperor, the Roman Empire, and I've given the equivalent of the Roman Empire to explain what and how in ancient times things were done, right? So you have an emperor who sits in a place, he has his palace, he has his city, he has his capital, let's say the Vatican, right? The Vatican is in Italy, right? But it is the head of all the Christians across the world. Correct or not, right? So
Yes, yes.
This is how they used to run. So in the ancient times also, this is how it was. So there was Raja Janak, sorry, Raja Maharaj Dashrath, which is Emperor Dashrath, and then he is the head of so many. So let's say European Union. So for any king to be an emperor, he needed at least 1,000 kings under him, or 1,000 zamindars in today's day and age. So only after you have 1,000 zamindars can you become a Maharaj. Otherwise, you're just a Raja, because Raja and Zamindar, there's no difference. They have small fiefdoms, and not in India, it's not even small. India is a large country. So they have their own armies, and this is how it was. The importance of Ayodhya. This is the difference between Ayodhya Nagri. Ayodhya Nagri is the district, Ayodhya Puri is the capital, and then you have Kosal, which is the name of the empire. So, for
Fire.
example, India is the country, Delhi is the capital, and within Delhi is Chanakyapuri.
Right. Okay.
Right, that's
So
where the
the
diplomatic.
royal dwelling.
Yes, so that's so wherever there is a royal dwelling, there is a garbhagriha, because that is the center of the country.
Okay.
So, and the center of the city. So whenever the city design would happen, the emperor's place or the king's place is always in the middle, just because it will facilitate the easy coming in and the going of the king, the kingsmen, and his ministers and everything. Remember, we are talking of a time that there was no communication via phone or internet.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right, so if people had to give a message, they had to physically go and give a
Yeah.
message.
So the mobility was a big issue, like how, the access and mobility.
Correct. So the cities were designed by the basis on the basis of access and mobility, and I have given pictures of this in my book as well. So you can see this. This is the layout. This is called a Rajdhaniya layout. So this is a city which has the Rajdhani in it. So this is so
Right.
you see the king's palace, the Garbhagriha. So this is the Garbhagriha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and we follow this in vastu. Even in our houses, there is always a garbhagriha in the house, right? Put anything there. You can have your temple, you can have your gods, you can do the puja part and havan in the center of the house, but you should not put heavy weight there. You shouldn't do this. Why?
Right.
Because then the citizens fall sick. So when we talk of modern Ayodhya, the building of modern Ayodhya, then we have to remember and see if we can put the temple in the center and then grow the
Mhm.
city around it, because then only the health of the city will be sustained. And I don't recommend that without a vastu expert should the city be expanded randomly. So one must understand the effects of cities, and how they grow without
Yeah.
because there are cities that don't grow as well. There are many cities that people have tried to establish and they don't grow, and then they fall into ruin. And then there are many cities that either are, not everything dies with raids.
Right. Yeah. No matter how many raids, they keep coming back because they are natural settlements.
Their natural settlements, and also understand why do they keep coming back. Why they keep coming back? Because that place has got something that has to offer, right? Why is that one place is so all the time rich
Mm.
and all the time flourishing, all the time happening? Why is this happening? And a lot of people say, well, we have America and we have Europe, and there are new cities and they're flourishing. Well, have you seen the vastu of those cities? They are following vastu to the T. We are the ones who are not following vastu. Even places like Dubai, they are made on I don't know whether they had a vastu specialist to advise them, but they are made on vastu design. They are made on ancient design. They are made on grid pattern design, grid
Right.
pattern. And I have put pictures of Dholavira as well, which is one of the most
Mhm.
ancient cities excavated, and how
It had a grid pattern.
yeah, it had a grid
It had like inner walls, and like there are like multiple concentric ways, like citadel, and yeah.
So Dubai has this sort of a pattern. Abu Dhabi has a grid pattern. New York has a grid pattern, and in India, I believe Chandigarh has a grid pattern, right?
Right. Right. Even Paris has a radial grid pattern.
Correct, correct. So these designs are working, right?
Yeah.
And in India, we have a khichdi pattern right now.
So that's the point I want to come to, because there is so much ancient knowledge about, like specifically about with your book, the way the city is designed, and so much is available for us. How do like, and our cities are a mess right now. Like every city, people like to talk about that. Okay, Delhi is better than Mumbai, and Bangalore is better, and this and that, and So much of that is superficial, but when you scrape that, like every city is like bursting as it seems. What is something that you feel like it's missing, that people should kind of directly reference, apart from the great pattern, of course, like from a thought process point of view? Because a city, a modern city, because one thing that you also say in the book as was that Ayodhya was particularly very dense, right? So the density was very high. The houses were like very very close to each other, and there were so many people. I forgot the number exactly, but then you mentioned that it was, I think you say that we can't identify the number of people,
Yeah,
but
because
then
yeah, because but it's very densely populated, and because of the expansion and the dense population, Dashrad required to restructure Ayodhya. So he had expanded and restructured Ayodhya because he wanted to do it, because his empire was expanding, and there was so many people. How can you accommodate so many people? Therefore, he
right,
expands it. So it's written. I've mentioned this in my book as well.
yeah. So what is the modern architects or urban planners like? What is it that something that they can learn directly to bring it to our cities and make them more sustainable and livable?
Okay, so for example, I think in Delhi we have a great case of Dwarka, which is very nicely planned, but then there is no office space there. Poor Dwarka people have to travel everywhere but in Dwarka
Okay,
to go for work,
make a living.
make a living, right? The opposite is in South Delhi. So South Delhi and to an extent Central Delhi are coveted places. Why are they coveted places? They're coveted because in South Delhi there is a little market in every colony, right? And then there is a bigger market of every area.
Okay,
Okay, so you look at GK will have its own market, like big market. Then you have the official areas in those areas. Then there is a hospital somewhere. Then there are malls. Then there are this. Then
okay,
there are that. So everything in South Delhi is so easy to get through. So West Delhi, by the way, is not designed like this or something. You would say. So all of West Delhi comes to South Delhi to party.
okay.
So I'm just giving you small examples. Like West Delhi, they even send their children
So
to
they were on their little spheres, and like they were on their world, like small sustainable um,
dwellings.
worlds.
Yeah, because see, सब कुछ मिलता है, right? So this is a concept that we have to imbibe. I mean, I think most of the city planners know this, so I'm just telling it for the audience. This has to be done. And in places where they have messed up, the property values and the living hasn't gone up there. So if you compare the rates of Dwarka, which I believe is a well done place, but there is a major gap there. So the Dwarka
Okay,
property prices will not be as high as the South Delhi property. Why is the South Delhi
because of the proximity.
yes,
And I think that's also one of the reason Gurgaon became more like a better option, because like in Gurgaon had like a lot of these dwellings where they were accessible because they built it later,
they built
and
it
maybe
later, and
because
they
it's a
built
different jurisdiction,
closed off colonies, like the Gurgaon
gated
is like a
communities.
security, yeah, gated communities they've built. And the infrastructure in Gurgaon is just shit. I'm sorry to say this is like it's a horrible, but people are paying a high price to stay in those apartments. Why? Because one, they have the facility in the apartments, and the other thing that they have is a proximity to work.
Right.
All the offices have moved out of Delhi and have come to Gurgaon. And why is this happening to Delhi? And the city planning is not bad only because we've had bad planners. The city planning is bad because the politicians are bad. Because everywhere they will make they'll make some slum area. They'll let people come in, they'll let the vote bank come in and say, okay, now this is legalized. Now all the telewalas are legalized, they can go anywhere. I mean, the city in the last 10 years has gone to the dogs. I mean, in the rainy
Most
season,
cities, yes, yeah.
the-
Same. The story is the same with most cities.
it's lack of political will, to be honest. They're not doing the job properly. When I first came, I don't remember the last time that I was listening to, roads being caved in South Delhi, like cars
Yes.
just getting stuck like this
Yeah.
because the road had caved in.
Right.
And it was happening all over South Delhi. What you saw on television was just one day of a bad
Okay.
thing, but it was happening on every other street in South Delhi. One day this bus is getting stuck there. Someday this is happening. Someday this water is coming. Someday it is in a terrible shape. To be honest, they haven't looked at infrastructure, and they're not looking at infrastructure because they're busy giving freebies. How will you get money for infrastructure if you're giving freebies? If you're telling people aapki bijli maaf, aapki pani maaf, and women
And
will ride free.
it's with every party, right? Like even yesterday, the prime minister was
Giving free
announcing
houses.
free housing to slum dwellers. So
And we know what's going to happen to that, right? They're going to sell that
yes.
house and go back to living in that slum.
Yes, yes. And I don't even know if they would be like, because I've heard a lot of people. I have some family in Delhi, like, they come and say, okay, because there are agents apparently who promise you that they'll get you flats in one of those buildings. So that's a different discussion. I don't really even believe that government should be giving this as an asset to somebody. Maybe like if you want to really solve the housing problem, give it like build it as a project and like give it as an affordable housing as a rent, like where people can live there, not own it. I think it's a different
Yeah, they
discussion.
should give rent and live there.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
that can only happen when you will have a crackdown on the this
Illegal,
illegal dwellings.
right?
Right? That can only happen then. So who's going to man those illegal dwellings? Who's going to make sure that they don't come again, right? Because people here will think that, well, if I can save 500 rupees, why don't I live there? People in India are not quality conscious people. People in India are money conscious people. They will change job for 500 rupees. Let's just be honest about it.
Yes,
So
yes.
unless we lay down the bare minimum of quality, it won't happen. Here, none of us wore seat belts, right? It was laid down as
Honestly,
law that this is
yeah.
the basic
And if there is
requirement
a
for you to be able
penalty
to.
for it,
There is a penalty for it. So unless the slum area people will start getting penalized, this will not happen. Secondly, let's face it, that in these places they run multi-million scams out there. So for example, the begging, the beggars that you see,
right?
these guys are professional beggars. They're not naturally hungry people, because so many temples feed
So there
people.
is like a racket that goes
It's a
behind.
racket, and this apparently some stats which I had read, and yeah, I don't know the correct stats. The money runs in thousands of crores every month. So if for thousands of crores you're going to live dirty on the roadside, shit, eat, and live there, and the government is allowing that to happen, the police is allowing that to happen, that means somebody's pockets are being filled somewhere, right? And we know which political parties also gain from all of this. So let's not fool ourselves and let's not blame the urban planners all the time. So there is a whole thing wherein the politician, the mafia, and the police are involved in it.
I guess that's one of the deficiencies of our modern, so to say, living without having a spiritual core. Because Ayodhya, as a like when we look at the Ramayana itself, Prabhu Ram, we even if it's like a history said in terms of, because he's like a Manav avatar, right? So he's a human being, he's a king, and he's like fighting for his wife. So very very primordial, so to say, necessities, like or social necessities, nothing divine, so to say. I think his qualities are divine, but then we look at him as a god, like a Bhagwan Ram, right? And then that spiritual. So if I understood your point correctly, that initially the Garbhagriha or Ayodhya center was the royal dwelling,
Yeah, the
and we
temple.
probably, okay, so it was originally itself, like even in Valmiki Ram.
Yeah, yeah. So there is the Garbhagriha is always kept empty,
Okay,
and there are temples around it, not one, many temples around it, and then comes the palace of the king. So you can see the map. So the
map, yes.
Garbhagriha is always kept as an empty space. So you'll notice, even if there is a temple, the space around the temple will be large. There's a
Okay,
very big space. So the empty space in the center has to be maintained in order to balance the whole city. So
okay.
the center, it's like the navel of any
Human.
person. So yeah,
Okay,
you don't put weight on the navel of the city.
okay. So that's my point, right? So when we lack that spiritual core, and that's, I think that was the whole essence for me personally of fighting for the Ram Janmabhoomi and Ram Mandir, is because it's not about, as we started out initially, it's not just a piece of land where you say, okay, why do you want to build a temple and why can't you build a library? You can go build a library anywhere. The important aspect is the spiritual core, because it gives you the identity that keeps us rooted, that keeps us connected to every single practice and the value system that we have as a society.
So I'll ask you another question. See, we have temples for certain avatars, right? We don't have temples for everybody. Let's
Right.
say, for example, Madalsa. Madalsa, right? Madalsa is a very famous character from the Purans, right? Because she was this queen who had achieved nirvana, or a kaivalya. She was a self-realized queen, and she's talking to her son. Do we have a Madalsa temple anywhere?
I haven't heard. Yeah, I haven't come
So, and
across.
then let's take a look at Matsya Gandha in the Mahabharata. There's a queen called Matsya Gandha.
Queen, yeah,
Do we have a temple for Matsya Gandha?
right. We don't. Yeah,
Do we have a temple for Bhisham Pitama?
no, yeah. Although he was the one of the most influential characters of the Mahabharata.
But we don't, right? We don't even have a temple for Vibhishan. Some people have gone and made temples of Ravan. That's another story.
Yeah,
But Ravan was still the head of the Rakshasas, right?
there is no Sthala Puran which originates about these characters.
Why? Because the importance to these characters is not there. Their equivalence is not there. We know that they existed, but we don't really go much into, like, we have to mark this
The
place.
reverence of.
Yeah. So you see, the Hindu philosophy works very differently. In earlier times, so see, and all of this is oral history, correct? And in certain places, we have kept for, let's say, for whichever avatar is there, we have said that this is who we want to keep as an avatar. We'll do this. Do you know the details of your great great grandfather? What details do you have of him?
Very few, like there whatever has been passed on until great grandfather. Yes, some of us, but yeah, beyond that, we none of us like
Do you have any of his identity cards?
nothing. It's just
But he existed because you are a
yeah,
proof of his existence, right?
yes,
You
yes, yes,
couldn't have come without a great great grandfather,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Right. So my point, why I'm saying this, why I'm giving this example, is that in earlier times you don't didn't have, today we have passport and ID cards and Aadhaar cards. We didn't have them yesterday.
Right,
So, what is the proof of existence of a person? And especially a person whom we have given so much value. So, if we are going to, so what was the proof? The proof was where he was born, where
right.
he went, how he did. So, you see, they have mapped the whole of his path, right? And made these places saying that this is how it was, this is how things were, and this is why we need to maintain it. Because what is the conversation today? The conversation is, well, he didn't exist. You think that in previous time this wasn't the conversation? This must have been the conversation in
Yeah,
previous time as well.
yeah, yeah.
Calling him false, telling that he doesn't exist. And it is human nature to do this because most men are born without any virtues. Majority of the men do not have virtues. So if they come across a man with so many virtues, they will first kill him. If they can't kill him, then they will want to wipe his memory, because a
Or
virtuous man,
discredit him.
they will discredit him, because a virtuous man with the sheer existence, only his sheer existence is enough to cause huge problems to narcissists and psychopaths and sociopaths.
Threat to their existence.
He's a threat to everybody's existence and way of living. They want to
Right.
promote their way of living, so therefore you will have lots of lies about them, therefore you will have this thing being broken down. Why did they attack this temple? They attacked because the number of people who used to go there was massive. More than Taj Mahal is how many people are now going to Ayodhya. Did you see on New Year's?
Yeah,
Record
yeah,
numbers of people have gone to Ayodhya on New
yeah. I
Year's.
think within the first year itself, we've already broken the record that more number of people have visited.
So can you imagine in the past how many people would have been going?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
No, no, we can't even imagine. This is the reason why it was demolished. And it was very clear. Babar was told that in India, people will not accept Islam because he was trying to convert, and he would convert, and they would revert back. So they noticed this phenomena that they would come convert people, and then sometime they'd find that the
Because in our psyche, it's just like we have so many gods. Like, what's wrong with one more?
yeah, but
Somebody will.
they would revert back to Hinduism,
Yeah,
right? They would
yeah.
not stick to Islam. So he said, now what do I do for them to stick to Islam? Because he was on his way to, he had given himself the title of Ghazi when, Zar Zoru Zameen capture karke, I want to be a Ghazi, and then I want to convert the infidels into, I want them to submit to Islam. So somebody told him, unless you will destroy the Ram from their culture or their religion, dharm, they will not accept Islam. This is why he went after the Ram Janmabhoomi, na? Why didn't he go to other temples?
So the memory, erasing the memory itself. Right?
So if there is no birthplace, then it can be like, okay, he didn't exist. So that's what happened today, right? You remove the birthplace, so where is his existence? And they're like, we don't
Right.
have proof. What proof do you want? We have oral. No, no, this is not proof enough.
Right.
Right? That is why the ASI was called, right? If
Right.
oral proof was ready, why didn't they believe us when we said it orally? We had Babar Nama. Babar Nama is saying, he's saying that I on this day I have demolished this temple.
Demolished it. Yeah.
You don't believe Babar?
Right.
Right? This,
Yeah. So
this.
that's his artifact, that which is what was remaining.
So you don't believe Babar, you don't believe us. You're like, no, no, there has to be more proof. Why? Because this is the psyche. Why do we say Ram Naam Satya hai when someone dies? What
Hmm.
is the need of saying it? Because somebody must have said na ki Ram Asatya hai. Because a virtuous man is always a threat by the
Right.
just by his existence or just by his theory. And the natural instinct of most men is to get over with it, right? Like don't. If he doesn't exist, then we can be at peace. We'll be the virtuous. That's this psychological malfunction in human beings is the reason that they do this. And of course other religions don't like it because they don't have such virtuous men.
So there is one thing that I was wondering, because there is one, like the way Valmiki Ramayana, when you read the book and the way that you have described, is one more book in, I forgot. So there is a book called Manasollasa in Kannada. I have not read it, but it's one of the Hoysala kings who has written, and that's one of our foremost authorities of several scriptures for Sanskrit, like our ancient scriptures. A lot of it is based on our knowledge is based on it. So and even like the fact of Ayurveda and several food habits. So when I was reading your book, it seems like a compilation of so many practices. And one of the things that in the Manasollasa books, that even I've not read that, but I've read like a abridged versions of that book, where they talk about food. So, and he was like a pre of food, as well as some aspects of vesh bhusha, like the dressing. So are there elements in that you have come across, like the fashion aspect in Ayodhya, apart from the jewelries and ornamentation? Like what? Because our cultural reference comes from like the TV serial, right? That we see always Ramji wearing like an orange saffron robe when he's on Vanvas, and then our royal reference come most of it from Mahabharat, where like people are wearing the royal ornament. But then I'm more interested in to say, like common people, like what was the dressing like, what did they have, like this. I'm actually very fascinated with headgear of ancient times and the medieval times. So are there some any references
Yeah, there are lots
to
of
the fashion?
references. I'll tell you, there are lots of references. The fashion was very unisex. So
Okay.
what is a unisex fashion? The unisex fashion is that both men and women wore dhotis.
Okay, so gender neutral.
They were gender neutral. Unisex, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So,
So I think the more woke term is gender neutral.
neutral, yes. So that is it. That's what they wore. They wore the dhoti, and the men would wear a patta made up of cloth around their waist. The women replaced it with kardhani or kamarband. So kamarband is of even the Western men took the kamarband idea from India, by the way.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. The word itself is an Indian.
Yeah. So for example, in the Indian Army, they have that they wear a red, they wear their pants and then they wear something red on top of it, or something that's a part of the uniform. So that
Okay.
is just mimicking the ancient way of dressing.
So that's is it like a if I have to take a pop culture reference, is it like a utility belt?
No.
Something. No, because what I've seen is, the reason I ask is, I've seen it in some sculptures, because they use this the pata to hold their daggers and swords and like other aspects like they
Yes,
might
yes,
be
yes. But
carrying.
it's not a utility belt. For
I
them,
just, which is why I used it like more
yeah,
of a loosely
cloth
term.
cloth cannot really hold a big talwar, it cannot hold a big sword. So maybe for little things maybe they tucked it, but it was not a utility
Hmm.
belt. It was to keep the dhoti in place. It was to keep it. So for example, so we have safety pin today, so women wear safety pin in their sari so it doesn't
Hmm.
open, right? So that is the
Right.
main idea, was so that it doesn't open. And the women, so the men are wearing the cloth kamarband, kamarband, and the women made it ornamental. So the women would wear stones and other
And
things,
jewelries, and yeah,
jewelry.
embellish it like so
Yes,
many
embellish it.
designs. And
In traditional, in south, they wear it more. In north they also wear it, but not as much, you'll see. But nowadays the fashion has gone to wearing it on the kamar, exactly, a slightly upper, the narrowest part of the waist is where you wear the belt now. Okay. In earlier time, it was on the lower part of the waist to keep the cloth in place. Otherwise, if somebody would yank it or pull it hard, it would
Okay.
come off. That's the reason.
So it would basically do the job, like, you can get through most of your daily tasks wearing it without worrying.
Yes, and for kings and queens, for example, when Ramji is being, anointed the king, the Abhishek is happening, then Sita comes in wearing an embroidered silk
Wow.
dress. So embroidery and on silk. So most people would wear silk in the earlier times. Cotton, I think, is a older discovery.
Right.
Silk is what people used to wear, and in India, you have so many different types of silk.
Oh, yeah, this is something that I've discussed with one of my relatives. Like, he's my brother-in-law. He's a very good authority on silk. He lives in Mysore and he's worked in the silk industry in the manufacturing space. So, but then unfortunately, even they believe that silk comes from China,
No,
right? Because that's our modern understanding. Because largely what is established is that the Chinese discovered silk in the ninth century, right?
no,
And then I try to explain him that, what, like, there are so many of these other, I think this is what can be.
not at all, not at all. In fact, Chinese have mastered. There is the certain, so they had this particular silk in Banaras. This silk comes from China. It's called Kim Kwab.
Kim Kwao, okay.
Yeah, Kim Kwab. So it's like dreams of Kim, like dreams of the. So it's one of the finest silk that comes from there. Then it's dyed and made into these Banarsi saris, and it's one of the most expensive silks that come from there. But we have huge Banarsi sari industry in UP only. How do you say that, that is there? And we have verses in the
Yeah.
Ramayana. And by the way, let me tell you that they don't do this in the Mahabharat. I have read things of gifts that were given to Yudhishthir when he becomes king. One of the kings gifts him for, I think he was from, yeah, I don't remember which king he was, gave him a shawl or a dress that was made up of cat hair, like it was mixed with cat
Far.
hair. Yeah, fur.
Yeah.
So no, it was a dress. Like for example, we have gloves. I'm not wearing any of that, but I have one on my mohair, like mohair. So mohair is from rabbits, right?
Okay.
If you go to Peru, they have llama wool.
Right,
So
wool.
they have, so whatever the animal is there, they've mixed
Hmm.
that. So mohair is
Okay.
mixed with wool and made, right?
Hmm.
So therefore, depending on the availability there and how they were bringing it, this is what was happening. So in India, we have silk. And so Valmiki Ramayana talks that Sita comes wearing this silk, and that is embroidered. And of course, she is full of gems and jewelry. And you spoke of headgear. So headgear is worn by people of status, or in today's world, lal batti wali gadi.
This is what I've come across this, but then I've also seen instances where even commoners, like if you go to Rajasthan, right? So even today there is, like, the headgear practitioner is still
Pagdi.
there.
Pagdi.
Pagdi is there, like, in Punjab and all, it's for religious purposes. Like, the Sikhs wear it for religious purposes, but then it's a very utility, and the pagdi is a very utility because it keeps your head, like, India is a hot country, it keeps your head sort of, like, maintain the temperature. And then there is, like, the safa and the pagdi and so many. So you have the Marathi safa, but then, like, there are instances in Vijayanagar, for example, that even the commoners would wear it. They were called kulai, and then, like, the difference was the material and the fabric and the quality of it, obviously.
So do you know what Chhatrapati means?
Chhatrapati, yeah, it's, I think, like, the emperor itself, right? I don't know if there is, like Chhatrapati Shivaji is, like, the
What is
emperor, but
Chhatra?
then Chhatra is the umbrella, right? So the covering.
Why is he called? Why is he called the Lord of Umbrellas?
I don't know that.
Because people, so I'll tell you. So the common man wore the pagdi and all of that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because nobody was giving him an umbrella. So most kings and queens in ancient times used to have people putting the umbrella, holding the umbrella.
For them.
Yes, for them. Even learned people like teachers. Why is a student called a छात्र?
Okay.
जो छत्र पकड़ा है वो छात्र है.
Acha, okay, interesting. Hmm. Hmm.
Based on who they are, will have different crowns. So for a man who has conquered the earth and the ocean, like a ruler of earth and the ocean. And this is also prevalent in the Egyptian thing, where something called a kirit. The kirit is a man who is an emperor. Kirit is given to emperor. So you'll see always will have a kirit, and it's
Right.
in my book I
It's like a
didn't find
cone.
a yeah
Yeah.
cone.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
When I was writing my book, I couldn't find a very good picture of the kirit that was available
You
to.
find it actually in more in the South Indian because Vijayanagara. So the kulai I mentioned,
Yeah,
it's actually very similar to the kirit.
yeah,
All our deities are usually shown wearing the. It's like a mountain.
correct, correct. So that shows that they have ownership over land and sea both. They are
Mm.
emperors, right? They've gone
Okay.
beyond the ocean. They are emperors. Then smaller kings will have mukuts, crowns. And then if you go even smaller, let's say princesses, or whatever, they'll have little just headbands or mathapatti, or
Yeah.
all of that, those little things that they'll have,
Yeah.
right? So this is the whole concept, and they don't need to wear the pagdi as much as the common man needs, because they have chatra. So there is this description in the Valmiki Ramayan that Sita, this is after Ram has been stripped of him being a prince. He's now a commoner who has to go. This is
Go
the
to the
order.
Vanvas.
Yeah, go to Vanvas. So Sita sees him and she starts shaking because she's so scared. She's like, she sees him without the chhatra. There is nobody carrying a chhatra for him. He's no longer a chhatrapati.
Okay.
Right, so there are so many people giving him the umbrella, so this is what it is, right? So, and that's why they can wear those elaborate crowns and stuff. So in earlier times, according to your rank you and status, you wore ththese things,
Different types of
different types of
headgears.
headgear. Otherwise, when it comes to women, all the women did sola shringar, and all the women are allowed to wear mangtika.
Right.
Is so women are allowed. So even those who are wearing, they would wear different kind of things. They would do their in particular styles, and of course, you can see them with the quality of their clothes, right?
Right.
And then the Dvijas used to have the Jenau. So, if you want to know the fashion, then those who were educated used to wear kundal. So they were wearing, the educated men were wearing, the women were always
So
wearing
they were like marks. They were symbolic marks. It was not. So it was prescriptive. So it's like wearing a suit. That means you're a like
corporate guy.
So you
You look like a dolphin if you want to be in the corporate world. And if you take a look at the suit, you look like a dolphin. It's like looking
yeah.
like a dolphin, right? So they're mimicking the dolphin. So yes, of course. So when you wear a particular dress, and who are you aping? You're aping the West, right? Right? You are aping somebody. You're aiming to be somebody, right?
Yeah.
So this is how it is. So that was like, if you work in this culture, this is what you're supposed to.
Yeah.
This
Right.
is the basic. So if you've gone to school, so one of the most important things of going to school is to get your ears pierced.
Okay.
Before you go to school, they pierce your ears, both for boys and girls. And the reason behind doing this is, which you will never find anywhere, but one of the reasons, they'll give you all sorts of reasons. This is it, this harmonizes this nerve. Surely they do that. But one of the things is to reduce the heat in the body. And because the heat then gives you, because you're eating all sorts of food and heat, and it is to reduce the sexual drive and the distraction of the
Hmm.
children that they have when they are young boys and girls,
Right. So
right?
that it doesn't affect with the pursuit, the
The pursuit of
educational
knowledge.
pursuits.
Yes, because that's the age that they need to be educated. So by the time they are a capable bodied beings, they are going to be helpful in society, and they can go and do a job and do this. So how do you know somebody is educated? Because
Okay.
everybody
The
has.
ears.
Yes, the ears are pierced. And so, and then another thing that the fashion was their perfumery. So how do they,
Hmm.
what is their idea of perfume? It's like they have had oil baths. So I'm sure that they had this hammam system going on there as
Hmm.
well, or they had these, the Nai used to do it. The Nai community, they were the personal masseurs. Like, let's say all the spa owners.
Right.
They were the Nai, unko Nai.
Hmm.
So the thing is that it is mentioned there that they are bathed. First they're oiled, they've had oil baths, they've bathed, and after doing that they've put chandan lap on their body. So chandan, why chandan? Chandan is a
Hmm.
coolant, right? Because
Uh,
we are living in a hot climate. So one, chandan is a coolant, second, chandan smells good.
smells. Yeah. It's still, I think, one of the best perfumes known to man.
natural, right?
Yeah,
Nothing. So they say that, these men, these handsome men and women that look like chess pieces on a chessboard. So by chess pieces on a chessboard, what they are trying to say is, because in ancient times the chess pieces were made very ornamental, not our, the goatees today.
plastic.
Not the plastic. They're very hand carved, very ornamental, very beautiful. So he says that, they are so many these beautiful men and women. Look at the clothes that they're wearing. Look at their, they're adorned like this. The men are like this, and the men are wearing this, and obviously they must have had the jinno as well, and their dwija. He says that they're dwij. So they're Dwij, and everybody is doing this and everybody is doing that. So what it means is that the capital of Ayodhya, which is Ayodhya Puri, is
Very
full of
prosperous.
very prosperous and full of educated men.
Mm, okay.
Educated, refined, and good looking people. Good looking as
Right.
in they're dressed well, and they've taken a lot of pride in their dressing.
Yeah, right. I think that's what it comes down to, right? So when we talk about fashion, it's about the refinement. Culturally, socially, you want to look good, you want to present yourselves better, and that's one of the difference when you read, when you Western, what do you call, like the stories. Western medieval fashion is like very very recent, right? So like, and when you go to the Roman part of it, like they pretty much, like, it was, I wouldn't say non-existent, it was not in to a level of refinement what we had, because they were
They
pretty
used
much
to
wearing around
import.
a
They
robe.
used they used to import cloth from India.
Yeah, that is, I know about it. So, but then I didn't want to get into that because we've already spent so much time. Again, that's like itself.
I
Maybe
know
we can have
that.
one more. Yeah, we can have one more because that's something that's very, very close to my heart. And I was reading so many stories, and like not just from a story point of view, but mapping it from a point of view, the Western hot couture fashion, and like how it was. One of my places of interest that keeps drawing me is Hampi, Vijayanagar, because that's my close to my hometown and where I was born, where I've been going as a kid to spend my summer holidays and also. And then that place had its own magic, right? And then there was it was a trading center of the India, largely of the Deccan, and there was so much cloth that was imported, exported, and so much. Even today, several, like the north, like Banaras, and like so many temple towns of India, there are so many temple towns, right, which are weaving communities. They make saris, they make fabric, and it was exported. And we all know the British and the cotton, and like all the story that comes along with it. So that it itself is such a vast topic. Maybe we can touch upon it, which is why I didn't want to go into it in
Yeah,
detail.
that's okay. We can continue with it.
Yeah. So there were just a couple of points before we finish. Just wanted to lighten it up and, like, bring it down to what simple aspects. I'm sorry, my phone has been ringing.
I know.
So we can, like, we'll close this in the next 5 minutes. So if there is, I wanted to ask you these questions, just small, short questions. If there is one historical figure, or like, one character of Ramayan who inspires you the most apart from Sri Ram and Sita, so who else is that person? Is that character?
I was going to say Sita, apart from.
Not the lead characters.
Well, so who are the lead characters? There's Janak, there is Dashrath, there is Keikei, there is Sita, and then there is Vibhishan and Ravan, and then they become negative characters. Of course, there is Hanuman, who's a devout. So these are the characters that make the Ramayana. So I think Janak is also quite impressive, and Keikei is very impressive. Keikei has exquisite taste. She's an See, what her if you remove the actions from who she is, then she's a fantastic person as well. What she did with Ram is wrong, but if you read about Keikei, it's quite fast. And why I'm saying this is because there's a lot of mention of Keikei in the Valmiki Ramayana. Her beauty, her ability to go to war, her intelligence, her wealth. Why is she the favorite empress? Why is Dashrath besotted with her? It's because of this reason, right? And her palace is exquisite. So I've given all the varnan, I've given all the descriptions of her palace as well, and it's like her best couch. Everything in her palace is exquisite. And she has this comment she makes on Kaushalya. She says Kaushalya doesn't even have money. So that shows this woman, this lady, this empress, this great queen or empress. She is so versatile. She is really an excellent, administrator. She's talented. Everything is there.
He's also a warrior.
except she makes the wrong decisions, terrible decisions. So she pays a price for it.
So one more short question like this. We spoke about fashion just a while ago. If you could make one of that, because they say fashion repeats itself, right? So like history, fashion repeats. If you could make one thing more relevant again in terms of fashion that you have read and understood from the ancient Ayodhya, the ancient amazing Ayodhya, what would it be? Any
In terms of
historical
people wearing that fashion,
fashion trends, like if there is something that could be more relevant again in the current times.
I think the jewelry adorning of men and women, that would look really nice, especially headgear.
Okay.
So because of these very fancy headgears and
Yeah.
earrings that they would wear, if we start donning it, it'll be really exciting. I don't know why Indians don't do it.
Yeah, we stopped wearing headgears
Yeah,
everywhere.
right. I think and headgear not in only in terms of like pagdi, but also like in especially for women wear more of the mang tika, because that if you were married you were wearing it all the time, right?
Mm,
So and then baju band,
mm,
I don't see women wearing it. So these are all auspicious. These are not for fashion. There is a reason you have got to cover this. Every part of a woman's body has to have auspicious things on it so it can
mm.
stave off negativity, can keep away negativity. Men are not as affected as women are.
Okay.
So therefore, this is the reason you from top to toe, women have all of this. Women have also not many women wear pile as well, especially
Mm,
the well-off people. Maybe because they're wearing boots and heels, they don't wear the pile as much. So you must wear the pile. It has great health benefits. Apart from being auspicious, it has great health benefits as well. They say that traditional pundits will say that if you have daughters at home, make sure that they're wearing like sound, that things that make sound. So even in the kamar band, things that make nice sound,
okay.
and make them wear piles. So when you have that, you'll always have Lakshmi in your house, because they're always making that pleasant sound. And sound, like good sound or pleasant sound, is important for any dwelling,
Mm,
and it always
okay.
doesn't come from music. So the feminine aspect has to be, like in feng shui you will say the chi has to move through the house.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm giving you the Chinese concept. So they have
Right.
the same concept, that they say that you keep a pet because there has to be some movement in the house when
Mm,
you're gone, otherwise it stagnates. There'll be no growth. So this is the Chinese way of saying it. And the Hindu way of saying it is make sure that your women are adorned. Even in
right.
Manusmriti it says, if you want wealth, then you give wealth, you give ornaments of gold to to the women of the house.
Okay.
It says there. And so the reason is so that whenever they move, they make these pleasant sounds that are pleasant to the ears and to the well-being of people.
Okay.
That'll
Interesting.
be good if Indian, and woke women are not going to do it. So this is not
Right.
addressed to them at all. So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is
Of course.
addressed to men and women who are slightly more traditional, or who want a little bit
Culturally rooted.
culturally rooted, or who believe that this could give them a pleasant being. Like what is life, what is good health, what is we learn about positive psychology, right? What is positive psychology? Anything that is going to elevate your being.
Right.
So that could be a good aspect.
Well, I think that's how fashion also works. That sometimes, like the trends becomes trends for no reason, and maybe that's a way. Fads. Yeah? Things become
But
fads. Yeah.
these are not fads for us. This is
Right,
culture
right.
rooted.
I'm just saying like that. That's one route by which things can become relevant again. That if a designer wants to bring in this element and want to embellish and say, okay, this is a new, um, you know, concept of a fashion, and people might go crazy about it. So
Yeah.
even the woke people might
Yeah,
want
so
to.
I remember when Zeenat Aman was there. I remember for one of the songs, I think it was Zeenat Aman or Praveen Babi. She wears a head.
Yeah, the famous song, right? Chura Liya Hai, or like one of the, I
Correct,
think the
correct,
movie itself. Yeah,
correct, correct,
one of her early
correct.
songs.
So a lot of women at that time started copying
Dam
it.
Maro Dam, I think. Dam Maro Dam. Yeah.
Correct. I don't remember the movie.
Yeah.
So a lot of women at that point started copying it and wearing that. That became a fashion fad at that time. And a lot of women will follow the fashion. So yeah, these are fads, they'll come and go. So but
Mm.
what we have as a culture, it's here to stay.
Okay.
And we must kind of like, there is a reason for it, right? And the reason is more than just following an icon. So I think yeah,
Right.
that'll be exciting. Seeing more women with headgear, pajuban, and pile. These three things
Okay.
I would definitely recommend.
Great. Sure. So, Neena ji, we've spent almost a couple of hours. If I could ask on what's next, if there is something that you're working on, if there is
Yeah,
something that you would want to work on something.
I'm working on a few different projects, but it takes me so long to execute them that it's really, really, so as soon as it's done,
Yeah.
I
No
plan to
stress.
write it in small bits and share it with everybody. And once it's done, then I'll just compile it. Then we'll share it.
We look
Let's
forward.
not let the cat out of the bag right now,
Okay.
right?
Look.
Because my research is not complete and it's sort of in the middle somewhere.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. So, yeah, thank you so much for spending time. I know it's been a very chilly Sunday morning in Delhi. I
Yeah.
hope things have gotten better now that we've reached the
I
middle
think
of
the
the
sun
day.
is coming out now
Yeah.
because
Okay.
the curtain
Yeah.
is so you can see it on the face when we started the interview versus now. At least on one side of the face, there is
Yeah. Yeah.
sunlight coming.
Yeah. Hopefully the day gets better.
Thank you so
Thank you so much for joining and spending time sharing your amazing insights about the amazing Ayodhya.
Thank you.
So, best wishes for your future projects and hope we get to enrich ourselves with more knowledge.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, namaste. Jai
Yeah.
Shri Ram.
Namaste. Jai
Thank
Shri Ram.
you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Take care.
Bye.